Former Undersecretary Ordonez. Ernie Ordonez.
Magandang tanghali, Ginoo, ang aking presidente. Ako po si Ernie Ordonez ng Alyansa Agricultura na may 42 federasyon. But for the benefit of the foreigners, I'll speak in English. Mr. President, you gladly told our assembly here that it will be infrastructure, tourism, and agriculture. And maybe the greatest of this in terms of employment is agriculture. And I'm so happy because I'm a personal witness to the eliminating of corruption in the Department of Agriculture. Thank you very much. I'd like to ask this question. In your opinion, what would be the main different thrust in agricultural development that we will take in the years ahead? What would be the main different thrust in agriculture that you will take in the years ahead, aside from eliminating corruption, which you've already succeeded in doing?
Well, I think the focus will be on increasing the farmers' incomes. That has to be the priority. Towards that end, they're setting up this. They have can I just use the formal name? But basically, it's a trading center that as regionalized and centralized trading centers. The first one is in Benguet. It's called Buying and Trading Centers. The first one will be the Benguet Agricultural Trading Center Complex to be set up in Trinidad, Benguet. The Agri-Pinoy Trading Center shall also be set up in Nueva Ecija, Urdaneta, Argao in Cebu, the Negros Occidental, Sagay City, Negros Occidental, Sagbayan Multi-Commodity APTC in Bohol, Cotabato Halal Research and Training Center in Cabacan, and the Producers Market in FTI here in Taguig. What you're trying to do is maximize the incomes of the farmer at the same time by the elimination of the middlemen and the various intermediary steps from farm gate to consumer. You're hoping to lower the prices for the consumers, but more importantly, ensuring that there is a steady route or path towards the farmers increasing their productivity and profitability. So that's one of the major features. That is, I think, the major difference will be concentration really on the farmers increasing wealth rather than generics of farm-to-market roads, rather than so many statistics on irrigated systems and so on and so forth. Now, all of the other activities are all geared towards really making him as most productive and most profitable. I guess that is the central thrust of our agricultural policy.
Thank you very much. That's very welcome. Thank you so much, Mr. President.
Before the next question, I'd also like to recognize the presence, in addition to Secretary Domingo, of three other partners of Arangkada in the foreign chambers who are in the cabinet, Mr. President. Secretary of Finance, Cesar Prisima, Secretary of Energy, Reneo Mendres, and Secretary of the Budget, Butch Abad. Welcome. Bobby Baden-Buckle.
Mr. President, thank you so much for joining us today. I'd like to ask, earlier you did mention that there are three, of the 7 you are prioritizing 3. I'd like to ask, given the surge of investment in manufacturing and the high multiplier effect of manufacturing to the rest of the economy, would your government consider manufacturing among those priorities? Now, having said that, I would like also to say that our Secretary Domingo has been very helpful in bringing in manufacturing industries into our road mapping exercises. But beyond that, would you say that this could be a priority for the Philippines?
It is a priority, and I'm glad that you brought it up. Secretary Domingo actually has reported a surge in manufacturing interest for 2012. Now, as you know, manufacturing suffers from the fact that we have very high electricity rates. The electricity rates, we are working on bringing them down, first by encouraging the setting up of the base generating plants, but more importantly, trying to hasten the open access for and to have the wholesale electricity spot market really fully functional. Now, that is a necessary step for us to be able to really encourage manufacturing concerns to come back here. But given developments within the rest of the world, even with prevailing conditions, there is already interest and there are already investments that are coming in. That has always been a dream of mine. The three that we prioritized are basically the doables right now, given the present condition. But the unexpected but welcome development of the re-entry of manufacturing concerns is definitely something that we will be nurturing.
Thank you so much. We would like to say that we share your dream in manufacturing. Thank you.
So, question from Eric Lachica, who's visiting from the United States. Eric.
Hi. Mr. President, as a Filipino American, as a dual citizen, I have a Filipino passport. Many of our senior citizens who are Filipino Americans are contemplating retiring here in the Philippines. We'd like to know, as one of the recommendations of the Arangkada project, are there incentives for the healthcare industry, the hospitals in particular, to be accredited to meet international standards to welcome back Filipino Americans? As you may know, more than 100 of us retire every day. That's the tsunami of Filipino Americans, especially in with the issue of Medicare coverage that we'd like to be extended to us who retire here in the Philippines. We'd like to know.
We understand there's a particular law, an American law, that serves as a constraint for us, for our institutions to be accredited. May we just inform you that we've discussed this, if I'm not mistaken, with the highest levels of the U.S. government, precisely to address that. And I think there are steps, there are initial steps already been authorized under that law. I think it's some who are in Guam have been authorized to seek treatment in the Philippines, but we want to expand that. So I will be having a visit with President Obama sometime towards the middle of the year. You can count on my requesting him again for consideration of accrediting more of our facilities. There were 2 congressional delegations also that came in. I'm not sure if we mentioned it to both. I believe we mentioned it to one of the delegations. There are invitations to talk with them again when we visit America. So I will be sure to request for that liberalizing of the facilities for the retirees in America.
Thank you, Brad.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you very much, Mr. President. Can we have a microphone, please? If I don't properly identify the questioner, will you please do that?
Thank you, Mr. President, for joining us this afternoon in this Arangkada Forum. I'm Techi Capellan. I am the country advisor of Sun Edison, which is the #2 wafer manufacturer in the United States. And we're very encouraged by your policy on manufacturing. And as you have very well said, the SunPower production of solar panels in the Philippines is the biggest. And in fact, it is already constructing its 3rd facility in this country, which is a testament to your leadership and to the message that you are bringing into the U.S. Investors. But unfortunately, most of the products of SunPower are being exported outside the Philippines. And I think your resolve to implement the Renewable Energy Law is something that will pave the way for bigger production of SunPower here in the Philippines. My question is, I think your government has given us a very good starting point in deploying solar energy in the Philippines. You have given us 50 megawatt, which is a good signal. What we would like is really, and this is more of an appeal, so that the residential sector who can benefit from a solar rooftop, that they can generate their own electricity and reduce their electricity bills, can benefit from the manufacturing sector that SunPower is offering. Are you planning to, do you have any specific plans in accelerating the net metering rules under the Renewable Energy Law that would accelerate the interconnection of homes that have solar systems in their rooftops into the grid? Thank you, Mr. President.
Well, that is not a function primarily just of the executive. My understanding of net metering is that they will have an ability to sell off their excess. Sell off the excess to the grid will need the wholesale electronics electricity spot market, and open access to be a reality. Open access is projected to happen hopefully by August. Full open access is expected to happen by August of this year. If it can happen earlier than that, then that will be a necessary outcome. But at the present time, given that Luzon, the biggest consumer, does not have a fully functional WESM, and open access is still a future occurrence, then it is not a possibility for today. But definitely will necessarily follow after the full implementation of WESM, open access and WESM.
Thank you, Mr. President. Are there any more questions? I can't believe there are no more questions. We have the President of the Philippines here in this room right now. Thank you.
Eric Nielsen of the European Chamber of Commerce. Mr. President, I understand that there are dozens of renewable energy projects in the pipeline, and many are waiting for the feed-in tariff. I wonder if you are able to enlighten us a bit on when we may expect that. Thank you.
Just so happens that the Secretary of Energy is present. Can I ask him to talk about the details with regards to the feed-in tariff issues?
May I welcome Secretary Rene Almendras to the stage.
We're about 54% self-sufficient in energy already. It's about 36% already coming from the renewable sources. We'd like to increase that number. Feed-in tariff is the most complicated. You do not want to, you want to have the inducements and for investors, but also want to protect the consumer's interests also. So Secretary Almendras, who's been tackling the problem for I think something like 10 months already, is in a very good position to answer your question.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the question. The authority that approves the feed-in tariff is the Energy Regulatory Commission. It is an independent body composed of appointees. We have been working with them closely. As a matter of fact, when all of you were on a holiday last Monday, I was with Senator Serge Osmeña most of the day working on a few things, and one of the things was primarily that. As to the actual timing, it should happen maybe soon. I cannot give you the exact date because I will be violating the independence of the Energy Regulatory Commission. There are ongoing discussions to bring all the parties together. Our democracy in the Philippines requires that everybody is listened to and engaged. And we are very close to a win-win solution. And as I said, it will happen soon. It will not happen next year. Okay, definitely not next year. And it will happen a lot sooner than expected.
Before Secretary Almendras gets away, can I indulge him with a follow-up question on the President's comment on open access, Secretary Almendras? He said as early as August. It would be incorrect to ask if you agree with that, but what is your opinion?
The President is very familiar with developments, not just in energy, but in most other sectors. That's actually quite accurate. Our schedule is to have it by August with a little allowance for slippage. The initiatives to get there is already ongoing. Private sector participation is very well underway. We'll be bidding out the infrastructure requirements, the software and the upgrading. Actually, we just approved it in the PEMC board meeting last Friday. So I believe all the energy sector players are very familiar because we're constantly in touch with them. So yes, open access will happen this year and hopefully by August.
Thank you very much, sir. That's good news indeed. I believe the Canadian Chamber President, Mr. Payne, has a question.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. This is asked on behalf of the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, not necessarily the other ones. My country was built on a base of agricultural development and responsible mineral exploration. We're a little bit confused about the policy in the Philippines in practice towards mineral exploitation. Your country is fortunate in being really mineralized, of having tremendous potential in this area. We believe that it can be developed responsibly and socially and equitably and to take into account indigenous peoples. We get the impression that there is forces within the country that are trying to ban mining altogether. We find this a really peculiar situation of basically throwing the baby out with the bathwater. We wonder whether there's going to be a further clarification on how you're going to exploit this great potential you have in this country for employment, for economic growth, and for improving the quality of life, including a lot of the people in the rural areas where the mineral deposits, the potential mineral deposits are found. Thank you. Salamat po.
I will assume that you're aware of exactly all of the issues attendant to the mining industry and the concerns with regards to it. Yeah, you've touched on a lot of the points that are already being raised as to how to afford that balance between protecting the environment and ecology and at the same time maximizing the gains from the industry. Towards that end, I commissioned a study made up of various experts within the cabinet to come up with policy recommendations. One, first, the review of the entire industry as it stands now. Second, the policy considerations that have to be in place and the recommended changes. They have submitted a preliminary draft of the report, and this is now being routed to various departments for their respective comments. I expect to have a completion of all of their inputs no later than the end of February. But since I've been asking for this from last year, I think middle of February would be an opportune time for everybody to finish their inputs, and we will come up with the very clear policy with regards to the mining industry, not later than the end of February. Thank you.
Cor de la Paz, former SSS administrator.
President Aquino, I would just like to inquire about what your administration and the rest of the country should be doing in the area of climate change and environmental degradation. Because as we've seen in the last 2 or 3 years, a lot of disruption has occurred because of these calamities that we saw with Ondoy and then Sendong and other parts of the country. We would be very interested to find out what's really going on. Thank you.
Can I start out with the good news? In good news, the DNR is basically studying the NCR region with regards to measuring the quality of air index. They think this is where air quality is most at risk, and therefore interventions that work within the NCR can easily be replicated elsewhere in the country. And towards that end, except for, of course, New Year. No? There was a continuous drop in, I have to remember the technical term, something like micrograms of particulates per cubic meter air, I think is the measurement. So from the time we started, June, it was something like 166. I'll have to update my numbers, but it went to 112 towards the start of the second quarter last year. And when I asked towards the end of 2011, it was still continuously dropping, below 112 if I remember correctly. I think hopefully we're getting closer and closer to the UN standard of about 90. What can we do? What are we doing right now? To mitigate global climate change, there is an ambitious project of planting 1.5 billion trees on 1.5 million hectares of government land. All of this to be done before I step down in June of 2016. Now, the innovation primarily is that we will be solving multiple problems. So first, gaining back the forest cover is a priority. Second, the means towards achieving it will be addressing also the issue of informal settlers within the NCR. There is something like 30% of 560,000 families who have indicated interest in going back to the province, and the incentive is we lend them actually 2 hectares of land to plant and to earn a livelihood from, and they will be assisted in their housing. But those in the upland communities will be tasked, there will be a conditional cash transfer program wherein the only condition is for them to guard the trees that will be planting. Now, they will also be assisted in farming coffee and cacao plants 3 years later, there is an expectation that they might even be able to pay back the condition cash transfers. And there is already three very large, there's a multinational and 2 countries who have already indicated interest in purchasing all of the coffee and cacao that we will be producing from these upland areas. Yesterday, I was in Cagayan in Iligan, and we were shown one of the problems. The Cagayan River, for instance, is heavily silted up. It erodes the river banks, which in turn produces the landslides. Now, towards that end, there is an infrastructure intervention being envisioned. They call them sabo dams, I hope I remember it correctly. And basically, it traps the sediment, those materials, vegetation, trees, and so on, so that you dredge not the entire length of the river, but you dredge only, well, you clean up the areas where the sabo dams are, and thereby lessen the cost of maintaining the water holding capacity of these river systems. There is an ongoing geohazard mapping for the country. This will be 1/10,000 scale. It will further identify areas at most risk. It will be standardized. We will be requiring all LGUs for the zonal use to strictly comply with these geohazard maps to mitigate any potential disasters from happening within the respective municipalities. Governor Hataman of the ARM was tasked recently to go after illegal loggers in Lanao del Sur, primarily, which were the main source of the logs that devastated Iligan City. He has been in office probably not more than 3 weeks. But already there have been complaints against him, so I assume that he has been really stepping on a lot of toes of entrenched vested interests in the area. So I think he's doing a good job. So that will accelerate. No? And we have a year and a half to be able to demonstrate distinct changes within the ARM prior to the next election, so that the constituents there can really have tangible results of what good governance is supposed to be bringing them in. Now, the last thing, I guess, is we contribute a very small portion. There's a very small carbon footprint for the Philippines. Unfortunately, we get the large carbon footprints from those more advanced and neighbors. So there is really a need for intense lobbying efforts from our countrymen, especially those deployed overseas, to call into question those who are adversely impacting the global climate, of which we are disproportionately bearing a large brunt of. That has to be a significant campaign by our populace and other countries similarly situated. Thank you.
I think the President has been extremely generous in his time today. We're going to have to cut off the questions now so he can keep on his schedule. We're going to resume a panel, but I'd like everyone who wants the President to come back next year to stand up and give him a round of applause, please.